Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the TLT podcast. We're already at the end of what is round 17, so the third major bye round of the year, mate. And look, if you're an NRL fantasy coach that is playing the bye rounds, you've probably done a lot of, I guess, work towards this round, maybe getting a few players in for the bye round. Most likely those players are out due to Origin. We've had Carraz being called as 18th man, which is an absolute killer for most coaches who would have got him last week, including myself. But mate, we'll go through the whole TLT. Firstly, how are you?
No, I'm good. I'm good, Cord. Very well. Just like you said with Kiraz as well being named 18th man, a lot of people probably would have got good old Reece Lightning in as well, and he got named as 18th man for the Maroons. So, look, a couple of diabolical selections, but no, I'm going really well, brother.
That's the way. And those two both play on the Thursday night game this week, Broncos, Bulldogs, which should be an absolute belter.
Friday night game.
Sorry, Friday night, no Thursday night due to the NRLW actually starting back up.
Yeah.
Let's go straight to the Bulldogs list, though. Wilson, Chuala joins the back line. Crichton, Carraz, obviously on Blues duty. Carraz, 18th man, really hurts the coaches there if he did bring him in. 703K at the moment. I would say he's a buy definitely after Origin. He's obviously fit and healthy, ready to go. So he's definitely a buy for the run home. The Doggies don't have any more buys. Other than that, fantasy-wise, mate, I wouldn't be bringing in anyone from the Dogs particularly, other than Preston maybe.
Preston and Kickow, I think, are good options, brother. And look, if you want to be a bit risky, maybe Connor Tracy. Burton's not bad either, but I think Kickow and Preston are the main ones. Kickow's definitely started to get some offloads into his game. 659K. I think he had 4 offloads last week, 3 to hand and 1 to ground. 61 points, break even at 36. There's a bit of money to be made there, or you can just get in Preston, who's a real solid option. Other than that, I don't think there's any real fantasy relevance at all for the Doggies outside of those 4 players.
You mentioned Reece Walsh playing Origin, or 18th man, should I say. So he is also out for the Broncos this week. Cobbo is back at fullback. Dean Mariner joins the back line in place of Shibasaki, who's got a rogue left field Origin selection call, which we won't get into this week on this podcast, but we wish Shibasaki all the best. Payne Haas, Pat Carrigan also out on duty. So Willison and Hetherington joins the starting lineup. Mate, fantasy-wise for the Broncos, Haas continues to go well. I'm not really seeing much else other than maybe Karapani, who's a sleepy buy.
Yeah, I think Karapani's a bit of an option. You need a bit of a cash out. I prefer him over, say, Jed Stewart from Canberra if you need like sort of a cash out centre or back that plays this week. I think his base is slightly better than Jed Stewart's. But look, outside of that, I think Adam Reynolds isn't a bad option if you're looking for, say, a third half. I don't think Adam Reynolds is the worst. Outside of that, I'm not saying to pick up anyone else from the Broncos there. They've got 3 hookers named. Smoothie, I assume, is going to be playing lock. Very interesting, but yeah, outside of, say, Adam Reynolds and Karapani, I wouldn't be picking up anyone else, Cord.
Yeah, definitely not, mate. And I'm looking down this list, I guess, for the Broncos. And after a great performance last weekend, mate, I can see them well into the top 4 to come home at the end of the year. They do have a tough run, but the way that they're playing, I do see them on a pretty good trajectory, mate. So you'd be pretty happy with them.
Yes, the last couple of weeks has been great, Cord. Great to get back on track. And then hopefully Benny Hunt, Dozer, is back soon.
Dozer. Moving on to the next game, and more headaches for coaches, especially my side, considering that the Dragons and Toby Couchman went down injured on the weekend. All the best to Toby. I believe it's in a shoulder injury, so he might be back for the rest of the season. We'll soon see after scans.
I don't think he'll be back. I reckon he'll have reconstruction surgery or surgery on his shoulder, and I reckon he's gone for the year.
Well, that's that then. Looking forward to the Dragons, though, and Val Holmes' absence has forced Shane Flanagan to really look deep into his extended squad here. Fainu is in. Terrell Sloan.
He's back.
He's back. After being told he's free to look for other clubs, he's back. RFM, Pacifica Tonga, Sele and Molo all coming into the 17. Stewart, Luciano Leilua, Nathan Lawson, Couchman are all missing from the weekend's game. So there's lots and lots of changes here for the Dragons.
I don't think anyone is fantasy viable at all, apart from Damien Cook. I think is the one player there that you could potentially have a look at if you haven't got so already. We picked up Cookie a couple of weeks ago, and while he hasn't been playing 80, he's been putting out some really good scores. So I think he's the only really one there to look at from the Dragons Court. If you've still got King Togia, that's fine, but I'm not telling anyone to go and get King Togia. So outside of that, that's it, bro.
I think this week is a big week as well for halves. There's not many halves the buy around, so a Finu, King Toga, I reckon that's pretty fine, I guess, if you hold them and want to just play them. The other option is Jerome Hughes, who we'll touch on a bit
Hughes
later.
and Fogarty.
Yeah, who definitely had an absolute belter of a round last week. Moving on, mate, to the Raiders, though. You mentioned Fogarty, Josh Papali'i playing Origin, another left field selection.
Oh, I love it.
Does mean Corey Horsburgh slides into lock from prop. Morgan Smith is promoted to the bench, from the bench to the starting side, should I say, and Trey Mooney is added to the interchange. Not seeing much fantasy relevance for the Raiders. Tarpany is not really getting the minutes that I want to see from Tarpany to be a buy, I'd say, for the rest of the season.
Yeah, if you still got Tarpany, I think he's definitely a hold chord. Like you said, Horsburgh moves from lock to prop with Papa out, and Smithies comes in at lock. I think if you still got Zach Hoskins, you would have been very happy with his performance on the weekend. I'm pretty sure he got in the 90s. Or no, I think he got a pretty solid score. Let me just clarify quickly.
While you do that, I will say that if you're thinking between
71
between Fogarty and Hughes, if you want to go between whoever, Hughes doesn't have any more buy rounds. The Raiders still have 2 buy rounds. So there's another reason not to get Tarpany or a Fogarty on the run home as well when trades are limited, and you want those guys starting in those key positions.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be getting in any of these Raiders players, but if you still got like Tarpany, I think he's definitely a hold. Hosking as well, Horsburgh as well. I think like Horsburgh should get, I think he played like 60 minutes or just under 60 minutes on the weekend. I think he'll get pretty similar minutes on the weekend. So they should all score well, Hosking, Horsburgh, Tarpany. We would like to see, like Cord said, a few more minutes for Tarpany. But outside of that, Fogarty I think is probably the best option if like moving forward. But like you said, they've still got a couple of buy rounds to go. So I'm not really keen to tell anyone to buy any Raiders players due to that, Cord.
Moving on to the next game, mate, if you're ready, is the Cowboys and the Storm. I'm predicting a bit of an upset this ground, and I haven't checked the betting odds, but I'm going to say on the Saturday night that the Cowboys will beat the Storm at home is my big prediction.
That is a big prediction.
Yeah, I'm just backing them in this
Cowboys
weekend.
are $3.70 on Sportsbet, and
I
Melbourne are $1.28.
I can see an upset. For the Cows, though, Tom Duffy has been recalled for his first game since round 2, the cheapie that everyone had. Yeah, the absence of Cotto Nanai Robson on Origin duty means he gets another start. Jordan McLean in his return from a calf injury. John Bateman also back. I'll tell you who was good, mate, and a buy this week you haven't got him is Scotty Drinkwater.
Oh, the king of the coast. He was unreal, Drinky. Look, could have gone a bit better, Cord, but that was marginally the reason he couldn't go better was due to the horrible conditions that was experienced down at the coast in the first half.
Yep.
Oh, look, I said it last night. We need to discuss this. What are your thoughts with Jackson Purdue?
It's a good question.
For me, his scores have been that average or that poor of late that I'd argue that even though he's playing, he's nearly almost like a sell because his break even, I'm pretty sure, is like in the
52
is very high. It's 62. His break even 62. He scored 15 last week. Like I'd argue you're nearly better to like go to like say a Karapani or someone like that with a bit of a lower break even because of just the fact that he's just going to lose a fair chunk of money this week. Like, look, if he goes out there this weekend, Cord, and let's say he puts out another lovely 15 points, very unlovely 15 points, he's losing 50K.
Yeah.
If you got Karapani in, look, he's probably not going to score 40 points on the weekend, but if he got 30 points on the weekend, he makes 30K. But the thing is like, that's something for me that I'm sort of considering at the moment because I've sort of held Purdue hoping that he'd come good, but he just hasn't come good. He'll probably come good this week. But, Yeah, it's just the risk that you have if you hold him. You're obviously going to get that score, but he could be losing a fair chunk of money. And, he was probably like 500K or something like that. And he's now down to whatever. I think he's at 448. So if he loses 50K, he's down into the 300. So that's definitely one there. Outside for that chord, Drinkwater, like you said, he's a great buy. Cowboys play all the way through to the last round, and the last round is their bye round. So good to see Duffy back. But outside of that chord, I think Drinky's the only really one fantasy-wise that you want to get in. Congratulations to Temple Kalepo, I believe. His name is. He's the hooker. I was talking to Wobbling just before, and he was saying he's the hooker for the Mackay Cutters.
Oh, yeah.
And he's been playing very, very well. So hope he goes well in his NRL debut. That's it in regards to the Cows.
Yeah, for the Storm, Pappenhausen, always a good shout. Jerome Hughes, I think he's a must-have this week, to be honest. The Cowboys, although they won last week, they've been conceding 50-plus points on average for the last, 3 weeks, is it? Or something like that.
They've conceded big scores the last few weeks, yeah.
I think that's one that you could definitely look at. Another one that you could look at, because the Storm don't have any more bye rounds and played absolutely elite on the weekend, is Eli Katoa.
100%.
66, 695K, averages 54, and I think that's gone unnoticed this year. He's an absolute workhorse, always getting 50-plus. It's almost a no-brainer for me. If you need a second row, that is.
I was saying last night, Cord, I think he's definitely an option that we will consider this week for the all-out team, as well as a lot of owners. And him and Jerome Hughes, I think, are great options. They're in the best 17. They're going to be starting, scoring really well. Hughes, 80 points on the weekend, break even of 19 this week. And Katoa went equally as well. I didn't go as high as 80, but he had 66 points. Break even of 49, like you said, averaging 54 for the season, nearly 55, 54.7. I think they're great options if you need a second rower. I guess other second row options that you could look at, Kickow, like we discussed before, maybe Tallis Duncan as well is another option that you can look at. But I think the good thing about, like you said, with the Storm, the Bulldogs are the same actually, is that they've had all their bye rounds, so they'll play all the way through. Pappenhausen's not a bad shout as well. His break even's a bit high after performance last week, but if you really need a wing fullback, 594K for Pappy. I know he only got 29 last week, but I expect the Storm to bounce back this week. And like you said, Cord, the Cowboys concede a few points. So that's something to take into consideration.
Moving on to the Roosters Tigers game, and good to see the Tigers playing a bye round, because that means Terrell May is in and means he's just a simple captaincy option. Taruva slides to fullback, Staines comes on the wing, Adam Dewey moves to 5'8", and Apikoros out with concussion.
Yeah,
is out. Fainu also in the halves after a 35 on the weekend. Not too bad. He'll make some money.
No. Yeah, Fainu's going fine, and he's going to get better every week, Cord.
Stafford Toa is also in. Talon Silva departing for the Eels means Tristan Hope takes over at hooker in just his second NRL appearance. For the Roosters, Tom Rodwell makes his NRL debut. So well done to Tom. Marky Mark into the centres to replace Toya. And there's a host of Origin players missing here. Crichton, Watson, Collins, and Lenu missing. I'm not really seeing much fantasy relevance for both of these teams, except for the fact that you should have James Tedesco in your team. And if you've still got Savala, happy days.
I think there's a bit of value in a couple of players here that I want to talk about. Latu Fainu, just touching on him firstly, I agree with you, Cord. Terrell May, easy captaincy option this week. I think basically I'd say 90% of people will be captaining Terrell May, maybe more. But in regards to the Tigers, I'm not seeing anything outside of Latu Fainu that I'd be saying go and buy them. So Captain May, Fainu, look, if you want to get him in and you haven't done so already, he's going good, and I think he's going to be in the halves for the rest of the season for the Tigers. I think Mason will probably drop out just to Fainu's form. I think that Mason, when he comes back from that suspension, probably go back to fullback until Buller returns. And then once Buller comes in, I think it will be Fainu and Fanu and not Jerome Hughes, Jerome Luai in the halves with Buller at the back, and I think Mason might be on the bench or something like that. But yeah, for the Roosters, this is the ones that we need to talk about. Now, if you haven't got Teddy, I don't know what you're doing, but just get Teddy in. He is just unbelievable. They've played all their bye rounds now, so you've got Teddy every week for the rest of the season. Marky Mark, look, we would prefer him to be on the wing. He's definitely, I think, scored a bit better on the wing, but he'll do well in the centres. I'm pretty sure, like, Marky Mark's been terrific. Averaging 48 fantasy points. He's been great. Dual eligibility as well, so centre and wing fullback. Sandon Smith, good for those people that have held on to Sandon Smith. He's been back. But the people I want to talk about are the second rower and a lock for the Roosters. Now, I don't know if everyone can remember, but the Roosters have come out and said Victor Radley is out for at least a month with his concussions because he suffered a fair few this season. And a guy that scored an absolutely humdinger of a try the other week, and I think is a serious option, is Fekete for the Roosters. A break-even of -3 is dual eligible as well, edge and middle. And he's averaging 30.6 for the season, but the last few weeks his minutes have increased due to his play. So, look, 42 minutes if we're looking at his last month. 42 minutes, 32 minutes, 49 minutes, and then 80 minutes.
He's got handy scores, hasn't he?
And he's got pretty good scores. So when he's played over like 40 minutes, he's got scores of 41, 35. What else? Oh, the only real bad one was 21. But I just think with the Radley news, I think that he's going to be the beneficiary as well as Steep. But the problem with Steep is that he's a bit more expensive. He's sort of made a fair chunk of money this season, Blake Steep. 531K. He's made 281K for the season already, Steep. And look, his scores are equally just as good. So I think those guys are going to benefit from... They could potentially benefit as well next week, but I think they're the two. Like, I'm seriously actually considering swap... Like, I actually might consider this for the all-out team as well, is selling Purdue and getting in Fekete, and then you can obviously use that bit of extra money to then upgrade, say, your Couchmans or whatever to, like, all our teams in a pretty good spot because we've already got like 200K in the bank. Problem is we've got fuck all trades left, pardon my French. But yeah, I think those are the guys that you've really got to have a look at. It could be a bit risky, but I think they're like sort of a player chord that you'd have as like a 19-20 in your squad.
Yeah.
With a bit of upside. There is another game, so I will keep my other thoughts. But yeah, just have a look at Fekete and Steep. I don't mind them at all. Savala's just been outstanding. At this point, he might just be a keeper chord.
Yeah,
Savala, he's been unreal. And Nafu White, I think Nafu White, he's not really like 100% go and get him in, but he's going to be great for the rest of the season, so he's a solid get. We can move on to the last one.
Yeah, moving on to the last game. Souths, not really much changes here other than Latrell in Origin camp. One person who was elite on the weekend was Talis Duncan, big 96. Keon had his worst game of the year for 36, has a break-even of 86. And if you're not a Keon coach like myself, Dor, would you go in and buy him with a break-even of 86 this week?
No, I wouldn't be buying him. He's 812K. If you really need a middle, I'd just do what I just said before and maybe get in like a Fekete or something like that. Yeah. Trade out one of your, maybe like a Tom Jenkins or something like that, or a Purdue, and get in, I think you can probably get Keon. I don't think he's going to drop that much.
Yeah.
He only played 60 minutes, I think, due to the scoreline and his workload over the last month or so. I think that Wayne just took him off and gave him an early spell, so he only played 60 minutes, but I think he'll be back to a good performance this week. In regards to the Rabbitohs chord, good to see Lewis Dodd named on the bench. Interesting one as well is the Cheese has been named on the extended bench on the reserves. So is Cody Walker, but I don't think Cody Walker's any chance. I think both Cody Walker and Smith will come back next week, I reckon.
Yeah, for Manly, though, I'm looking down this list, and it's a pretty stacked side in the origin period. Tavovic still at centre, Garrick on the wing, which worked well on the weekend. He scored. Cherry Evans is always a good option now that he's not playing origin. Jazzy Tafunga starts at hooker. Plenty to like in this Manly side, mate.
Yeah, a bit of news as well is that Nathan Brown had surgery today as well. I can't remember exactly what for, but I'm pretty sure he is out for the rest of the season. So that is something to take into consideration. But I'm sticking strong with what I said earlier or the last few weeks, Cord, in that the fact that our Jazzy Tavanga is probably a sell after this week. Nathan Brown ruptured his bicep. So after this week, I think Jazzy's a sell. You would rather Jazz be playing lock than hooker, but it is what it is. Turbo was great to see in his first game at centre for the season. Put up a really good score. I think it was 49 points from Turbolicious there. Yes, it was 49 points from him. Got to be happy with that. Look, we don't know if he's going to stay at the centres for the rest of the season, but if that's something that we're looking at, I think that's going to be really good for Turbo owners. Outside of that, I'm really not saying going and buying anyone really from Manly. I can't buy Turbo because the sample size is so small.
Yeah,
Garrick's solid. Like if you don't have Garrick, you need a centre wing fullback. I think Garrick's a good option. Cherry Evans, similar to Adam Reynolds, I think is a solid third option. In terms of South, well, look, Ewan Aiken's definitely going to get the DPP now for second row and centre. So that's a good thing for owners. But for the Rabbitohs, the only player I'm saying look at buying in is Tallis Duncan, I think.
Yeah.
He's been outstanding. He did score 2 tries on the weekend. But look, he's there. I think he made 80K on the last week. He's up to 630K. I'm just trying to think if it's too late. Like
I don't think it's too late.
Rabbitohs don't play round 19, so that's something to consider. But Cam Murray's trying to come back at the back end of this year.
That's another reason not to get Koala Matangi as well.
I don't think that Cam Murray's going to be back this year, just with where Souths are sitting and whatnot. They'd have to go on an absolute heroic run. But yeah, Duncan's a solid option. I think obviously you hold on to Keon. And then if you still got Hubner, hold on to him because he's actually starting at lock. So that's pretty good news for Hubner owners. Outside of that, Cord, just quickly, before we end this week's pod, I want to touch on a few players.
Of course.
There's obviously everyone's seen the June 30 deadline. A few players have shifted clubs. And there's also been a few injuries that we need to discuss. These players you wouldn't buy in this week. But if you want a cash down option and you don't need a number for this week, these are some good players, I think, to pick up. First one, Talon De Silva from West Tigers now has moved to Parramatta on a 4.5-year deal. He's openly come out and said that he wants a starting position. That's why he left the Tigers. He wasn't happy being second fiddle. I think for the length of the contract and whatnot, I think that he's definitely going to be starting. Riley Smith, I believe, still out for like another week or two suspended. Yep. Unfortunate if you'd like Joey Lussick, but unfortunately the days of Lussick are over. You've seen that Parramatta, how they've played, Cord. They like to get in the young. Yeah, Jason Riles loves getting in the young players. So I think, unfortunately, De Silva, he's priced at 230K. He is cheap as chips. He is bottom dollar. And he got 42 points in his last game of the Tigers where he actually started and played, I think, like 60-odd minutes as well. So if you're looking for someone to get a bit of value and some good points out of 230K, I think De Silva is a great
Might just
option.
get him this week.
Yeah.
What do you reckon?
That's what I said. Well, he's not playing. The Eels aren't playing this week. But if you want to get him in, he's 230K, free up some money and unleash on a gun to get in. Yeah, like upgrade Couchman to... You could go Couchman to Keon if you wanted to, or something along those lines. The other player, Cord, is I don't know if he's guaranteed to get the jersey, but the other one is obviously the unfortunate news of Luke Metcalf suffering his season-ending ACL injury. Tanner Boyd. I think will get the Metcalf spot, and
Okay.
he's priced at 497K. So
There was a period where for the Titans that he was scoring well above 60 plus every week.
I don't. With De Silva, I think he is actually one that if he's going to get that role, he's going to play those big minutes. De Silva, I think, is definitely a must-have.
Yeah.
Tanner Boyd, I think some wait and see, but he could definitely, if he's getting that goal kicking, which he most likely will, he's going to get the kicking in play, playing behind that Warriors pack. I think he is also another player to look at.
Yep.
They were the only two I wanted to talk about, but just some big news, obviously, with injuries and player movements that these guys, I think, are going to benefit.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And I think they're good calls. De Silva, that's a great call. And I reckon, listeners, if you've made it all the way to the end of the podcast, that's a very sneaky play there from Dawn.
Oh, well, we'll probably touch on it next week when he's starting, but I just wanted to give a little heads up if someone really needs that money, that every K counts. If you can upgrade or downgrade, say, a Tom Jenkins to a De Silva and then upgrade someone else like a Couchman or something to like a 800K player, you're laughing.
Good on your Door. We might wrap it up there for the week.
100%.
Buy, hold, sell out tomorrow with the other boys.
Yep.
Potentially a Thursday pod, actually. I've heard news there because there's no game on the Thursday, so that might come out Thursday. Other than that, we might see you next week, or we will see you next week. And other than that, good luck this weekend.
Best of luck. See you, everyone.